I'll be reading from Mark chapter 6, verse 6 to 13. Mark chapter 6, verse 6 to 13. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village. Calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. These were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff. No bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not an extra shirt. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them.
But today is it's a special day. We are setting apart Reagan for eldership. And so this is a leadership moment. And we really have a high view of leadership. And so we get to just really just love on these guys today. They are amazing. Where are they? Reagan, Maita? What? Just stand up so everyone can see you. This is Reagan and Maita. And they've been in a process of sitting with the eldership team and learning. And so today is their big day. And I want to speak to them particularly as a leader and charge them in God's word. But it's not only for them. It's for any other leader amongst us and anyone that's aspiring to become a leader. We've got lots of different people in positions of leadership in this church and people who are out in the world exercising their leadership gifts. And so we want to speak to you also today. So it's going to be slightly shorter, but I want to charge us today. Jesus is adding leaders because he's got a work for us. We're renewing Johannesburg through the gospel, and that's what he's busy doing, and that's why we're growing in wattage for the work of God amongst us. And so if you've got a Bible, I have to be short. Just really one verse I want to focus on over here from Mark chapter 6. It's verse 8, but let's just read again from verse 6. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village, calling the 12 to him. He began to send them out, sending them out 2 by 2, and gave them authority over impure spirits. And here's our verse. These were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff. Take nothing for the journey. No bread, no bag, no money in your belts. And so that's the focus that I think is coming through so clearly in this passage this morning. I wonder if you've ever traveled and if you can just imagine after you've packed your bags, you've got your bags packed, and you've got your extra clothing, and you've got your extra shoes, and you've got extra tackies, and you've got your gym wear, and you've got extra money. And as you just imagine, as you're about to leave, somebody says to you, leave everything behind and just leave with the clothes that you have on, with the money in your wallet, and go and travel just like that. Just imagine that was the case. How would you feel? I imagine that most of us would feel unprepared to travel. Most of us would feel vulnerable. Most of us would feel like, man, I'm under-resourced for the journey. And yet that's exactly what Jesus says to his leaders as they're about to go. It seems so counterintuitive. But he says to them, take nothing for the journey. Take nothing for the journey. And so here's the big idea. I need to get to it quickly because I only got 15 minutes. But the big idea is this. It's Jesus plus nothing. If you want to be a leader, it's Jesus plus nothing, which equals everything. It's reliance on Jesus and Jesus alone. He is the main thing. He's the only thing that you need. He is the number one. If you can remain reliant on Jesus as a leader, you'll be okay. I had to travel to the UK recently. Greg is here, so I'm going to confess my sins right now. But I had to travel to the UK for a conference, and I booked my tickets well in advance, and I paid my conference fee well in advance, and I booked the hotel well in advance, but I forgot to get the passport well in advance. And so there I am. I don't know, it's like a month before I try to get the passport, and it's the war in Russia, and I can't get the passport because there's a backlog. And it's the one thing that I needed that I didn't have. The most important. Have you ever had everything except the one thing? The most important thing. How did that feel? It was horrible, right? I remember one time I had to have a very difficult conversation with someone. And I knew it was going to be a hard conversation. I had some hard things to say to the person. But I had to go and do it. And so I go and I meet to the person. And we, it's difficult. It's challenging. They don't like what I'm saying. And it's very awkward. And we share a meal, but it's awkward. They want to leave. I want to leave. And at the end of the meal, I realized I forgot my wallet. So they're about to go. Hey, have you ever been here? They're about to leave. And I'm like, sorry, I just before you go, like, would you mind just paying for the meal? Have you been on a date where that happened? You forgot your wallet? Yeah. And then they kind of storm off. And as I'm walking out of the restaurant, I realize the parking. I still have to pay for the parking ticket. So I'm like, just sorry, would you mind just... So... And yet the world sometimes is running after everything, but forgetting the one thing that they need. The most important thing. We're running after everything. We're running after education. We're running after money. We're running after partners. We're running after everything. But the main thing, the one thing that we need is Jesus. Jesus and Jesus alone. That's the thing that you need. And you're going to kick yourself if you don't have that one thing, because that's the thing that is going to sustain you on the journey of life. That's the thing that's going to sustain you in the journey of leadership. It's the one thing that you need. David said, one thing I ask, one thing I seek, that I would dwell in the house of the Lord. That I would gaze on the beauty of the Lord, right? All my life. That's the one thing that I need. As a church, we seek to be normal. We want to wear normal clothing that people wear. We want to speak about things that people are speaking about, mental health. We want to engage with what the rest of the country is engaging with. We seek to be relevant in that sense. But we have social media accounts, we have cameras, we have all of these things. But I tell you something, that's not the foundation. The foundation is Jesus and Jesus Christ alone. You can take the cameras away, you can take the fancy clothes away, you can take the social media accounts away, you can even take the building away. But the foundation is Jesus. And if you got the foundation right, you've got everything. The house is not built on sand, it's built on the rock of Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone. And that's true not only for leadership, that's true for your life, it's true for my life. Are you building on the rock, on Jesus Christ? You can have a whole bunch of things right. You can have the career right. You can have everything right and still have everything wrong because you've forgotten the one thing, the main thing. The difference between religion and a relationship with Jesus is that you've got proximity and closeness and a real sense that Jesus is with you. And that's the main point in this passage. Take nothing for the journey except the staff. Except the staff. And so that is the one exception. I thought that's quite a strange exception to make. I got a sword when I became an elder. So I was going to give you guys a staff. But then I realized it's just a stick, right? And that, so I was in Robin Park and I was like, I could give you guys a stick, but it's just, it would be weird, right? Because it's like a stick. And it made me think even more, like, out of everything that Jesus could have said to his leaders as he was sending them, as he was commissioning them, take this one thing. As the one exception, like, I'm sure they could have gone like, why didn't he say like money? Like take extra money, because that's like helpful. We can buy stuff on the journey, or take like extra shoes, because what if our shoes get broken? It's like, that's helpful. He says, take a stick with you. Out of all the exceptions he could have made, take a stick, take a staff. Why does he say that? I think there's symbolic significance to the things that he's talking about here. I think there's symbolic significance to taking no bread and having a belt and sandals. If you remember in the Exodus story, those were the things that they were told to wear as they were busy eating the last meal, the lamb. They had to eat it with their clothes tucked into their belt, and they were supposed to wear their sandals, and they were supposed to eat the meat, but they weren't supposed to have any leaven, no bread, and they were supposed to eat it ready on the move because God was about to pass over, and he was about to set them free. He was about to do something, and so they needed to be ready. They needed to be full of faith, waiting for God to move. And so once again, Jesus is saying something's about to happen. I'm going to lead a new Exodus. I need my disciples to be ready. I think that's the significance of it. But there's another part to that story. And the part of that Exodus story, which I think is very significant for understanding this, is the part where Moses is 80 years old. He's 80 years old, and he's walking around. He's looking after sheep. He's tending sheep. His life is going nowhere slowly. And he's just looking after sheep, which isn't very exciting. And God appears to him in a burning bush. You remember that? The bush is burning, but it's not burning up. It's not like Moses. Moses is getting old. He's burning up. The bush is burning, but it's not burning up. And then God speaks to Moses in this burning bush and says to Moses, I want you to go against the most powerful person. I want you to confront Pharaoh. But I'm not going to give you an army. I'm not going to give you money. I'm not going to send you as a president or as a prince. I want you to take a stick, a staff with you. And then God says to him, listen, what's in your hand? And he replies, there's a staff in my hand. And then God tells him, and this is a funny passage, tells him, throw it on the ground. And the staff becomes a snake. And then it says Moses ran away. Right? And then the next thing that God does is God says to him, now pick it up. Pick up the thing that you just ran away from. And Moses has to pick it up, and he picks it up. And then God says this to him. He says, this, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. The staff, the stick will be a reminder to the people that God himself is with you. God is going to be strengthening you. God is going to be doing miracles through you. The stick is going to be the thing that helps people to know that God is with you. The stick is not there for the disciples to shoo away animals. The stick is not there to help people, the disciples on a walk. No, the stick is there to help people to know God is with you. And if God is for you, nobody can be against you on the journey. If God is strengthening you, then you are empowered and you will be able to do all that God's called you to do. And so God sends them into this very dangerous context, like Moses was sent into a very dangerous context against Pharaoh, against the most powerful person. Not with a whole bunch of resources, but just with the representation of God's presence with him. The presence of God is what you need to be able to do leadership well. The presence of God is what you need in order to walk the long walk of leadership. And this passage is just permeating with danger. He's given them authority to over evil spirits, like ancient demons. He's given them authority over that's implied confrontation with an enemy, much like Moses had to confront Pharaoh. They're going to confront demons. That sounds dangerous. And then this passage is actually, the whole story is actually built into three parts. There's this beginning part that we just read, and then there's a part right in the middle where John the Baptist is beheaded. And then there's a part right at the end where the disciples return. Right? And so right in the middle of this passage, Jesus is saying, listen, there's going to be some danger. Christian leadership is not safe. Being a Christian is not a crutch. Mark's got it wrong. It's not the opiate of the people. No. It's not a crutch that you use. You're salt and you're light. You're going into the world. You're challenging. You're confronting. You're changing things. And so it's not safe. But Jesus says to them, when you start to feel fearful, because it isn't safe, because it isn't easy, and there's a danger sometimes as leaders that we can start to give way to fear in our lives. And this is so common. Sometimes we can be up against these challenges. They come our way. And we can feel, man, I don't have the degrees in theology, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. And we can feel under-resourced for what God's called us to. And you might start to develop some imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't belong. God's called you to something and you can't do it. And you start to feel like, I don't know how to do this. I'm fearful. And when leaders give way to fear, they're not fun anymore. They're not good to be around. When they become insecure in the calling of God, They start to rely on other things instead of the one thing, Jesus alone. It's not easy, but Jesus reminds us that we are called to this journey. Verse 7 says, calling the 12 to himself, calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2. You're called and then you're sent. You wouldn't have been sent. God wouldn't have asked you to do what he's asked you to do. He wouldn't have placed what he's placed in your heart to do if he didn't call you. Called and then sent. And God equips everyone that he calls. It might be a treacherous road. It's like you're on a 4x4. You're on a treacherous road, and on this treacherous road you need to drive carefully. But Jesus says, "I'm going to be the one that has called you, and I'm going to be the one that equips you on this road." Jesus called people, and he still is calling people to himself and sending people out. So often in leadership books, when I read leadership books, secular leadership books will focus on having a high IQ, that makes you a good leader, having high EQ, that makes you a good leader, how you treat people, leadership all about people. We hear stuff like that all the time, having a good organizational culture. The Bible says, listen, the thing that is most important for the leader is a vital reliance on Jesus. Jesus calling you, Jesus equipping you, you relying on him. Relying on him for everything in your life. Not that we are competent in ourselves to claim anything for ourselves. The Apostle Paul said, our competence isn't in ourselves, but our competence comes from God. Our competence is in him. It's a treacherous journey. It's a difficult journey that we're on. But our competence is not in our own ability, in our IQ, in our EQ, in our ability to strategize or to create institutional culture. Your competence comes from God. The apostles weren't the smartest people in the world. We know that. We can see all their mistakes. It's not like Jesus was like, oh, who's the cleverest guys? We're going to make them in charge of everything, right? And put the apostles in charge. They're the big guys, the smart guys. And then like second, the good-looking ones. Who are the good-looking ones? They're not so smart, but they're going to be the evangelists because people, they smile and they have good teeth, and then people will just become saved. And, and then like the not so bright ones, you're going to be the pastors. The nice ones. The people that love people, you're going to be the pastors. It's not how it works. No. It's a calling. Jesus calls people to himself. And he equips them. Paul said, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And his grace to me was not in vain. He was equipped. Maita's got a prophetic gift. It's a gift from God that he's given her to fulfill the calling. She teaches and she preaches the word of God. It's a gift. It's a calling. Reagan can dance really well. And he can rap. Did you know that? His name is actually Young Razor. It's a gift. He was born with that ability to move. It's a gift. It's a grace gift. It's not, he didn't merit it. He didn't work hard and then God gave him the ability to, No, he was called. These guys are like an amazing couple. They remind me of Priscilla and Aquila. God has gifted each one of them in specific ways for the journey that he has for them. I've not often seen people cry for their congregation. I've seen Reagan cry for our church. I've seen him cry for marriages. What leads up to the marriage alpha course was a heart moved for the people. He's a shepherd. God's given that to him. It's a spiritual gift. It's an above-average gift. I've seen him cry for the Witkoppen kids, not even only for our congregation. He's got an extraordinary, abnormal sense of responsibility for people. It's a gift. It's a spiritual gift. God's given it to him and equipped him for the task. I've seen their home open almost on every Sunday. They've got 4 kids. Half the kids' work is just their kids. And he's got his own business, but his home is open every Sunday. They're cooking, they're hosting, they're engaging with people. It's a sense of, Jesus said, I'm the chief shepherd. He said, I'm the chief shepherd. He had an extraordinary sense of responsibility for people, so much so he would die on the cross for people's sins, right? They've got something of that. You've got something of that in you. It's your shepherds. God has given them to us so that we are able to reach the city. We are able to renew Johannesburg through the gospel. But He's given us people like this to be able to do that. I want you to remember your competence comes from God and from the gifts that He's given you. He's called you and He's equipped you to be shepherds and to be pastors to this congregation. Just in closing, I love Lord of the Rings. There's a line where Frodo is about to embark on his journey. And as he steps out, Samwise, I think it's Samwise who says to him, "It is a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to." And I have a sense that today is a day where you're stepping out. And it's a dangerous business stepping out because you don't know where this leads to. And there's an excitement in that. You're following Jesus. In all that you're doing with your whole life, you're following Him. And you're stepping out into something. I want to charge you, Reagan and Maita, to step out in confidence, relying on Jesus every step of the way, every day. As you step out on the journey, rely on Him. Put Him first. The foundation is reliance on Jesus. For leadership, for our church, for your life, my life, the foundation is rely on Him and rely on Him daily for God's glory and our strength. Amen.